You know, just making sure her parents don't sit next to your Uncle James after that political argument last Christmas, Franklin said with a dismissive wave. You know how special her family is. We should discuss it privately because of the politics and all that. Of course, Elijah said, his voice flat. We can't have the wrong people sitting together. The tension in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. I watched my husband and my son, and I knew deep in my soul that Elijah wasn't wrong. Something was terribly, horribly wrong. After Franklin and Elijah left my office, a cold dread seized me. I was supposed to have a final call with the caterer at 10:30, a call I had been planning for weeks. I picked up the phone, my hand trembling slightly, and called them. I told them I had a family emergency and needed to reschedule. It was a lie. The truth was I had cleared my entire morning. I couldn't shake Elijah's words, nor the nauseating feeling that Franklin's false cheer had provoked. Something was happening in my house today. And for the first time in 25 years, I intended to find out what it was. I spent the next 2 hours pretending to be busy. I tidied the kitchen, which was already spotless. I rearranged the floral centerpieces on the dining room table. Every sound made me jump. Every passing car made my heart hammer against my ribs. I felt like an actress in a play performing the role of the happy mother of the groom. While inside, I twisted with anxiety. Exactly at 10 o'clock, a sleek white BMW pulled into our driveway, Madison's car. I watched from the kitchen window as she stepped out. Even in simple jeans and a blouse, she looked like she belonged on a magazine cover. She walked up to the front door with the natural confidence of someone who knows she belongs. My heart was beating so loud I could hear it in my ears. I crept out the back door and circled the house, crouching low behind the large hydrangea bushes that bordered our living room windows. I felt ridiculous, like a spy in my own home. But the need to know, the need to confirm my fears or dispel them was overwhelming. Through the large bay window, I could see them. Franklin had let her in, and they were standing by the fireplace, the spot where we took our family pictures every Christmas. He was pouring her a drink. I couldn't hear their words, but their body language said it all. They stood close. Too close. His hand rested low on her back. It was a casual gesture, one that could be easily explained away, but it lingered there for a second too long. I clenched my hands into fists, my nails digging into my palms. 25 years we had built a life in this house. We had read stories to Elijah on that very sofa. We had hosted countless family parties in that room. And now my husband was standing there caressing another woman, my son's fiancée, on our son's wedding day. I was about to stand up to storm in like a fury and confront them right then and there. I didn't care about the scene. I didn't care about the wedding. I only cared about the scorching betrayal I was witnessing. But then I noticed movement in the upstairs hallway, a shadow in the glass's reflection. I looked closer. It was Elijah. He was standing at the top of the stairs, hidden in the shadows, watching them, too. The sight of him, so still and broken, stopped me cold. This wasn't just my pain. It was his. Downstairs, things had escalated. Madison's hand was now on Franklin's chest. She leaned into him, her head tilted back, a smile playing on her lips. She said something and he laughed. It was a sound I hadn't heard from him in years. Light, genuine, happy, the way he used to laugh with me when we were young, and everything seemed possible. In that moment, I saw my husband transform into someone I didn't recognize. Someone alive in a way he hadn't been with me for a long, long time. Then his hands were in her hair, and they were kissing. It wasn't a quick peck. It was a deep, passionate kiss, the kind you see in movies. My vision went red. A roar filled my ears. I took a step toward the house, ready to rip the door from its hinges, ready to scream until my lungs gave out. And then a hand gripped my arm. I spun around, my heart leaping into my throat. It was Elijah. He had slipped out of the house and come to find me. His face was pale, ashen, but his eyes burned with a cold, hard determination I had never seen before. "Mom, don't," he whispered, his voice strained. "Not yet, Elijah." I choked on the words. I couldn't even say it. "I know what it is," he said. His voice was steady, though I could see his hands trembling. "Mom, I've known for weeks." Weeks. The word came out as a strangled whisper. I stared at my son, the boy I had raised, who now looked at me with the eyes of a man who had seen too much. We were still crouched behind the hydrangeas. The beautiful flowers I'd been so proud of were now serving as a hiding place for the destruction of our family. Inside the house, my husband and my son's fiancée had moved from the fireplace to the sofa. I couldn't bear to look. "I didn't want to believe it at first," Elijah said, his voice low and urgent. "I kept making excuses for them. He's just being kind. She's just nervous about joining the family." But it kept happening. The lingering looks, the private conversations, the way she lit up whenever he was near. He corrected himself. The slip-up, a painful reminder of a life that no longer existed. She was supposed to be getting a new mother figure, not a rival. "I mean, Madison, why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of shock and a strange protective rage. "You shouldn't have had to carry this alone." "Because I needed proof," he said, his jaw clenched. And because he looked at me, his eyes much older than his 23 years. I wanted to give them enough rope to hang themselves. He pulled out his phone. His hands shook slightly as he tapped the screen. "I hired someone," he confessed. "What did you do?" "What?" "I'm not stupid, Mom. After I saw them having lunch together a month ago, a lunch Dad told me was a business meeting and she told me was an afternoon shopping with her girlfriends. I knew I wasn't crazy. I needed to know the truth." He handed me the phone. "I hired a private investigator." My breath hitched. "A detective." "Elijah, the money." "Don't worry about the money," he said grimly. "It was worth every single cent." The first photo on the screen showed Franklin and Madison walking into the St. Regis Atlanta downtown. The timestamp indicated it was 3 weeks ago, a Tuesday afternoon, when Franklin was supposedly at a regional sales conference. The second photo showed them leaving together 2 hours later, looking heated and disheveled. "There are 17 different occasions," Elijah said quietly as I scrolled through a gallery of betrayal. Photos of them in dimly lit restaurants across the city. Photos of them pressed up against Franklin's car in a private parking lot. Photos of them laughing, holding hands, living a completely different life behind our backs. I felt sick. The sheer magnitude of the deceit was breathtaking. This wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a calculated, long-term affair. I stood up again. A fresh wave of rage washed over me. "We're stopping this," I said, my voice like steel. "Right now." "No." Elijah's voice was sharp, making me crouch down again. "Mom, trust me, I have a plan. A plan, Elijah. This is insane. We can't just let the wedding. Absolutely we can. He cut in, his voice ringing with an authority I'd never heard from him before. And we will. Mom, think about it. If we confront them now, what happens? They'll deny it. They'll twist it. Dad will say you're being hysterical, that you're misunderstanding things. Madison will cry and play the victim. They'll turn it all back on us. He was right. I could already hear Franklin's smooth, placating voice. Simone, you're overreacting. She's a nervous young woman, and I was just offering paternal advice. So, what do you suggest? I whispered, my anger giving way to a cold, terrifying clarity. Elijah's smile was something chilling and unfamiliar. Public humiliation, he said, the words hanging in the air between us. Total and absolute destruction of their reputations. Legal consequences. We don't just end this, Mom. We make sure they can never ever do this to anyone again. I looked at my son. When had he become so calculating, so ruthless? Then I looked back through the window. I saw my husband, the man I had loved and trusted for a quarter of a century, start to unbutton Madison's blouse on the sofa where we had built our family. And in that moment, I knew the woman I used to be, the understanding, forgiving wife, was gone. She had died right there in the dirt behind the flowers I had so painstakingly planted. Tell me the plan, I said. That evening was one of the strangest of my life. Franklin came home acting as if nothing had happened, asking about final catering arrangements. Madison had left hours before, and he was the picture of the loving husband and proud father. He talked about his speech for the reception, about how proud he was of Elijah. The hypocrisy was so thick I could barely breathe. I just nodded and smiled, an empty shell of myself, while inside I screamed. After Franklin went to bed, Elijah and I met in my home office. The door was locked, the blinds drawn. It felt like a war room, and in many ways, it was. On my desk lay the beginnings of a file of evidence that would make a prosecutor weep with joy. Tell me about that detective, I said, studying a surveillance photo that turned my stomach. Her name is Aisha, Elijah said. Asha Whitfield. The name hit me like a splash of cold water. Aisha. My sister. Aisha. Elijah nodded. I didn't know who else to call. I knew she was a cop for 20 years before retiring and starting her own PI agency. I knew she was smart and she'd be discreet. He looked a little sheepish. I also knew she never really liked Dad. I let out a short, sharp laugh that sounded more like a sob. My little sister Aisha. We were close, but I hadn't told her about the growing distance with Franklin. I had been too proud, too ashamed to admit my marriage might be failing. I'll call her, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Aisha answered on the second ring, Simone, it's past midnight. Is everything okay? No, Aisha, nothing is okay. And then the dam broke. I told her everything. What Elijah suspected, what we had witnessed that morning, the photos. I cried ugly choked sobs for the first time all day. She listened patiently, her voice calm and firm on the other end of the line. There was no shock or surprise, just a grim acceptance. I'm not surprised, Simone, she said quietly when I finished. I've seen the way he looks at that girl. I was hoping I was wrong. Elijah told me about the photos, I said, wiping my eyes. What else do you have? More than you probably want to know. Her voice turned professional. I've been tracking their movements for 3 weeks. They meet twice a week like clockwork at Deceit Regis Atlanta. He always pays in cash. They eat lunch at fancy restaurants he'd never take you to. Last week, he took her to Cartier. I felt that flush of rage again. Our money. The money I managed so carefully. The money that was supposed to be for our retirement, for our future. And Simone, Aisha's voice was soft. There's more now. Something bigger. I've been digging into Franklin's financials, trying to figure out where all this cash for the hotel rooms and gifts is coming from. He's been sloppy. What did you find? I asked, dreading the answer. There was a long pause on the line. It's not just Madison, she said, voice heavy. It's not the first time. I found a series of regular monthly payments going back 15 years, always to the same person, a woman named Nicole Jenkins. The name meant nothing to me. Who is she? I did some digging. She was a junior associate at his old firm when Elijah was a child. She left abruptly about 15 years ago. The payment started a few months after she left. Aisha took a deep breath. Simone. She has a daughter, a 15-year-old girl named Zoe. I ran a background check. The father isn't listed on the birth certificate, but I'd bet my license that Franklin is her father. The phone felt heavy in my hand. I couldn't breathe. A daughter, an entire other child, 15 years of lies, 15 years of a double life. The secret trips, the inexplicable expenses, the emotional distance, it all clicked into horrible clarity. I have to know for sure, Aisha, I whispered. I know, she said. I'll handle it. But Simone, you have to be prepared. When this drops, it's going to be a nuclear bomb. I know, I said, my voice cold and hard. That's exactly what we're counting on. The 24 hours leading up to the wedding were a blur of calculated deception. I moved through the preparations like a ghost, my body on autopilot while my mind raced. I smiled at relatives. I approved the final table settings with the wedding planner. I even helped Franklin with his tie, my fingers brushing the silk fabric as I imagined tightening it around his neck. Every interaction was a performance, every polite word a lie. Aisha worked quickly. She was a professional and this was now personal. She told me she had a contact at a private lab. It's risky, Simone, but if we can get a clean DNA sample from Franklin, we can get a non-legal preliminary comparison to a sample from the girl. That night, after Franklin fell asleep, snoring softly beside me in the bed we had shared for a quarter century, I crept out of the room. My heart pounded with every creak of the floorboard. I went to the bathroom and took his toothbrush from its holder. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped it. It felt like the ultimate violation. But what was this compared to the violations he had committed against me, against our family? I carefully tucked it into a plastic bag and left it in the mailbox for Aisha to collect before dawn. The next day, as the house buzzed with the chaotic energy of florists and photographer,